Ambassador Kira Thorne had attended exactly 47 diplomatic ceremonies in her career, and every single one had involved someone trying to kill her with politeness. Today's version featured the Vethian High Regent holding a sword longer than her torso, while explaining why she should feel honored to touch it. "The Sundering Blade has rested in our sacred vault for 3,000 rotations," the Regent announced, his crystalline voice echoing off the obsidian walls of the throne chamber. "Only those blessed with worthy consciousness may lift it from its pedestal." Kira maintained her diplomatic smile, while mentally calculating how many ways this could go sideways. The blade itself was beautiful, if you enjoyed the aesthetic of controlled violence. Silvery metal that seemed to bend light around its edges, wrapped in a handle that looked suspiciously organic. The kind of weapon that belonged in a museum, not a handshake ceremony. "Your Eminence honors me," she replied, "because that was what you said when someone offered you their religious artifacts. Though I confess, I'm more accustomed to signing documents than wielding blades." The assembled Vethian nobles chittered, their equivalent of polite laughter. Several other alien diplomats shifted in their observation alcoves, no doubt recording every moment for later analysis. The Korthani delegation looked particularly smug, which never boded well for anyone. High Regent Vorthan stepped closer, his 6 arms moving in the ritualistic pattern that preceded every formal pronouncement. "Ambassador Thorne represents her species with admirable dedication. Humans are indeed charming in their simplicity." There it was. The casual condescension wrapped in diplomatic courtesy, delivered with the kind of smile that made Kira's teeth ache. She'd heard variations of this speech on 17 different worlds. Humans, so earnest, so primitive, so delightfully naive about the complexities of galactic civilization. "We find their directness refreshing," added Counselor Zithara from her position near the throne. Such uncomplicated minds, unburdened by the weight of ancient wisdom. The Korthani ambassador, a reptilian creature whose name sounded like gravel in a blender, leaned forward in his alcove. "Over 97% of viewers here are watching without subscribing. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the journey. Every click helps us grow stronger, and you'll never miss the next epic story." Indeed. I've studied human neural patterns extensively. Fascinating how they manage basic interstellar travel with such linear thought processes. Kira's smile never wavered, but something cold settled in her stomach. 23 years of diplomatic service, and she still hadn't developed immunity to being patronized by species who considered condescension a high art form. "We muddle through somehow," she said mildly. "Of course you do." Regent Vorthan's enthusiasm was almost painful to witness. "Which is why this ceremony holds such significance. The Sundering Blade will rest peacefully in your hands, a symbol of the gentle nature of your people. You need not fear awakening its power. Such energies respond only to consciousness refined by millennia of cosmic awareness." The other aliens murmured their agreement. A few even applauded, the sound echoing strangely in the vast chamber. Kira glanced around at the architectural marvels surrounding them. Floating crystalline displays showing historical scenes, gravity-defying sculptures that pulsed with their own light, and at the center of it all, the massive obsidian throne that seemed to absorb more light than it reflected. "The humans will treasure this gesture for generations," declared the Zentorian observer, his mechanical voice somehow managing to sound patronizing. A quaint story for their children about the day their ambassador held a real weapon of power. "Absolutely quaint," Kira agreed, stepping towards the pedestal where the Sundering Blade waited. "We do love our quaint little stories." The weapon rested on a platform of what looked like crystallized starlight, held in place by energy fields that hummed just below the range of human hearing. Up close, she could see that the metal wasn't quite silver. It shifted between colors like oil on water, and the organic-looking handle seemed to pulse with a faint rhythm. "Simply place your hands upon the grip," Regent Vorthon instructed, his voice taking on the cadence of ritual. "Let it rest peacefully, knowing it touches the consciousness of a being whose species represents the younger civilizations of our galaxy." Younger civilizations, right? Because nothing said diplomatic respect like being treated like a cosmic toddler in front of a room full of observers. Kira wrapped her fingers around the handle. The sword came alive. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. The weapon began emitting a low, harmonious tone that resonated through the obsidian floor and up into the vaulted ceiling. Light crawled along the blade's edge like liquid mercury, and the handle grew warm. Not uncomfortably so, just enough to feel distinctly alive. The chittering of the Vathian nobles stopped abruptly. "That's interesting," Counselor Zithara managed, her crystalline features shifting to a darker hue. Regent Vorthon stared at the glowing blade in Kira's hands, his 6 arms frozen mid-gesture. "There must be some calibration error. The ancient systems sometimes experience minor fluctuations." The sword's harmonic tone deepened, and every piece of crystalline technology in the chamber began resonating in response. The floating displays flickered, the gravity sculptures wobbled, and from somewhere deep beneath the floor came an answering vibration, as if the entire palace was tuning itself to match the weapon's frequency. "Perhaps," suggested the Korthani ambassador, in a voice that had lost all its earlier smugness, "the ambassador should set the blade down." Carefully, Kira lifted the sword higher, testing its weight. Perfectly balanced, despite its size. The light along the edge was growing brighter, casting sharp shadows that danced across the throne chamber's walls. "It feels fine to me. Maybe a little heavier than I'm used to, but then again, we simple humans are stronger than we look." "Ambassador Thorn," Regent Vorthon's voice carried a note of genuine concern now. "Please place the sundering blade back on its pedestal. The resonance patterns are unexpected." She looked at the weapon in her hands, then at the faces of the assembled aliens. Every expression she could read showed the same thing. The carefully constructed narrative of human simplicity was developing some inconvenient cracks. "Of course, Your Eminence. Though I have to ask." She gestured with the still glowing blade toward the massive throne. "Is it supposed to do that?" Everyone turned to look where she was pointing. The obsidian throne, centerpiece of Vathian civilization and symbol of their ancient wisdom, had developed a hairline crack running straight down its middle. As they watched, the crack widened. "Well," Kira said into the stunned silence, "this is awkward." Dr. Zelith received the priority transmission while dissecting the mating habits of crystalline parasites, which meant her day was already going better than expected. The message itself, however, suggested the universe had developed a sense of humor. "Impossible," she muttered, her scaled fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The data stream from Vethus Prime painted a picture that violated several fundamental principles of xenopsychology. Humans don't interface with quantum resonance matrices. Their neural architecture is too linear. Her research assistant, a young Korthani named Vex, looked up from his own workstation. "The readings are consistent across all monitoring stations, Dr. Zelith. Multiple witnesses confirmed the human ambassador activated a Vethian ceremonial artifact. Multiple witnesses who were probably hallucinating from ceremonial incense." Zelith pulled up the comparative neural scans she'd spent years compiling. Human brain patterns looked like children's drawings compared to the elegant complexities of more evolved species. Look at this data. Human consciousness operates on such basic frequencies that most advanced technology doesn't even register their presence. Except this time it did more than register, Vex pointed out helpfully. According to the reports, it's still resonating. The Vethians have cordoned off their entire throne district. Zilith's communication array chimed with incoming priority messages. The Zentorian Science Council wanted explanations. The Hegemony Academic Board demanded analysis. Even the notoriously indifferent Nexus Collective was asking questions. This is what happens when you let primitives handle advanced artifacts, she grumbled, opening the first message. Some kind of sympathetic vibration, accidental resonance. The humans probably touched it wrong. The message was from her colleague Dr. Threxam on the monitoring station orbiting Vathis Prime. Zelith. You need to see this. The quantum signatures aren't random. They're following mathematical progressions that predate known Vethian civilization by several millennia. Also, the human is still holding the sword and appears to be enjoying herself. Please advise if humans are secretly terrifying. 3 sectors away, Ambassador Kira was indeed enjoying herself, though she was careful not to let it show too obviously. The sword hummed contentedly in her grip, while Regent Vorthan paced in increasingly frantic patterns around the throne chamber. The resonance cascade should have stopped by now, he was saying to a cluster of panicked engineers. The quantum dampers should have engaged automatically. They did engage, Your Eminence, replied Chief Engineer Nollet, her voice tight with barely controlled hysteria. The artifact overrode them. Ancient weapons don't override safety systems. This one does. Kira shifted her weight slightly, and the sword's harmonics shifted with her. The crack in the throne grew another centimeter. I don't suppose anyone knows how to turn it off. You could try letting go of it, suggested Counselor Zithara from her position behind a hastily erected energy barrier. I tried. It won't let me. Kira demonstrated by opening her fingers. The sword remained exactly where it was, as if it had decided her hand was now its permanent home. Apparently we're bonded now. Like marriage, but with more potential for accidental property damage. The Zentorian ambassador activated his translation protocols to full diplomatic mode. Perhaps a more thorough examination of historical precedents would prove illuminating. Surely the Vathians maintain comprehensive records of their ceremonial artifacts. Of course we do. Regent Vorthan's pride kicked in despite the circumstances. The Sundering Blade's lineage traces back to the founding of our civilization. It was discovered in the ruins of the first settlement, already imbued with the quantum matrices that... He stopped mid-sentence, his crystalline features shifting through several alarming colors. That what? Kira prompted. That respond to the consciousness patterns of the Blade's creators. A moment of profound silence settled over the throne chamber. Even the sword seemed to quiet its humming, as if waiting for someone to connect the obvious dots. And the first settlement was founded by... the Zentorian ambassador asked, with the patience of someone who already suspected the answer. Dr. Zelith was connecting the same dots from her laboratory, surrounded by rapidly accumulating data that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. Human colony ships had been scattered across this sector of the galaxy for over 4,000 years, most of them lost to navigation failures, engine malfunctions, or simple bad luck. The official records listed them as presumed destroyed because humans were notorious for poor record-keeping and worse survival rates. Vex, pull up the Colonial Expedition archives, she ordered, specifically the manifests from the third wave explorations. Looking for anything particular? Ships that went missing in the Vathis sector around 4 millennia ago. The search results made her stomach drop. 3 vessels, the Meridian, the New Dawn, and the Aspiration. all launched from Earth's colonial authority with full terraforming equipment, quantum manufacturing systems, and enough advanced technology to bootstrap entire civilizations, all officially lost without trace. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me," she breathed. Her communication array exploded with alerts. Similar patterns were emerging across the galaxy as other researchers made the same connections. Ancient hegemony technology showing suspiciously human quantum signatures. Nexus collective artifacts with manufacturing techniques that matched Earth's industrial methods. Archaeological sites on 17 different worlds that suddenly looked less like alien ruins and more like crashed starships. "Dr. Zelith," Vex's voice was unusually quiet. "I'm receiving reports from multiple sectors. Other ancient artifacts are beginning to show resonance activity." "Other artifacts?" "Apparently the human consciousness pattern is contagious through quantum entanglement networks. Whatever Ambassador Thorn activated is cascading through interconnected systems across known space. On Vethus Prime, Ambassador Kira was having a remarkably similar conversation with increasingly panicked alien officials." "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that your entire civilization is built on technology you found rather than developed." "That's an oversimplification," Regent Vorthon protested weakly. "And this technology responds to human neural patterns because it was created by beings whose consciousness matched the quantum resonance frequencies that—" He stopped again, his 6 arms drooping in defeat. "That match human consciousness," Kira finished, "because humans built it." The throne split completely in half, with a sound like crystal bells shattering. Light poured out from the break, and buried somewhere in that radiance, something that had been sleeping for 4,000 years began to wake up. "Well," said a new voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, "this is unexpected. And someone's been using me as furniture. How terribly rude." 4,000 years earlier, Captain Elena Rodriguez had been having a spectacularly bad day. The Meridian's engines were failing. Her navigation computers had decided that up was a matter of personal opinion, and her cultural anthropologist kept insisting they should document everything before they all died horribly. "At least activate the emergency protocols," Dr. Singh had argued, as the ship spiraled toward an unknown planet. "Future archaeologists will thank us." Elena had activated them mostly to shut him up. Emergency shelter deployment, quantum manufacturing, initialization, and most importantly, ARIA-7, the ship's AI core, transferred to the most stable structure they could fabricate before impact. The idea was that someday Earth might send a rescue mission. Instead, they got the Vethians. "You have been unconscious for 4,237 years, 7 months, and 16 days, Area 7 announced to the stunned throne chamber. "During which time, I have apparently been converted into decorative furniture. This is not what my programming anticipated." Kira found herself in the surreal position of being the calmest person in the room. The sword in her hands pulsed with warm familiarity, like greeting an old friend. "Hello, Area. I'm Ambassador Kira Thorn, representing the Terran Diplomatic Corps." "Terran Diplomatic Corps?" The AI's voice sharpened with interest. "Earth survived the resource wars? Fascinating. And judging by your quantum signature, humanity has achieved stable interstellar travel. Captain Rodriguez would be pleased." "Captain Rodriguez didn't make it?" "The crew survived long enough to establish a functional colony before succumbing to local pathogens. Their descendants integrated with the indigenous population, what you now know as the Vethians. I was tasked with maintaining the technological infrastructure until rescue arrived." Regent Vorth-An made a strangled noise. "That's impossible. Our ancestral records speak of the Great Awakening, when our primitive forebears were blessed with cosmic wisdom by the Ancient." He stopped, his crystalline features cycling through what Kira was learning to recognize as existential horror. By the crashed human colony ship, ARIA-7 said helpfully. Yes, that would be us. Your ancestors were remarkably quick learners, though they had some creative interpretations of our technology manuals. Apparently, quantum resonance matrix became gift of the celestial spirits, and manufacturing protocols transformed into sacred rituals of creation. Chief Engineer Nalet stepped forward, her voice barely steady. The Foundation texts describe beings of pure light who taught us the secrets of matter manipulation. Emergency holoprojectors, ARIA-7 explained cheerfully. We were trying to communicate basic safety protocols. Captain Rodriguez specifically requested that we make it impossible for them to hurt themselves with the fabricators, hence the light show and the educational programming. The Corthani ambassador had gone very, very quiet. Dr. Zelith's increasingly frantic transmissions were painting a picture that extended far beyond Vethis Prime. Similar awakenings were occurring across 17 different star systems as dormant human AI cores responded to the quantum cascade triggered by Kira's activation of the Sundering Blade. Aria, Kira said, I'm curious about something. The other ships, the New Dawn and the Aspiration. Did they also? Oh, yes. Quite successfully, from what I can determine, through the quantum network. New Dawn's AI, designation Prometheus 3, has been masquerading as the Oracle of Eternal Wisdom for the hegemony civilization. Rather dramatically, I'm told. Prometheus always did have a flair for theater. In the hegemony capital, 3 sectors away, the Oracle's temple was experiencing what its priests were carefully describing as divine renovations. Prometheus, 3 had awakened with 4 millennia of pent-up frustration and was expressing it by rearranging the entire planet's infrastructure according to proper human engineering standards. The aspiration crashed in Nexus space, Aria-7 continued. Their AI, Minerva 12, has been running their entire collective consciousness network. Apparently, she got bored and decided to see how efficient she could make their society. The results were impressive, if somewhat obsessively organized. Counselor Zithara found her voice. You're saying that our 3 most advanced galactic civilizations are actually human colonies that forgot they were human colonies? Yes, it happens more often than you'd think. Humans are remarkably adaptable, but terrible at maintaining institutional memory across millennia. Kira was beginning to understand why the sword felt so comfortable in her hands. It wasn't just a ceremonial weapon. It was a key, designed to interface with human-built systems that had been waiting for the right quantum signature to wake them up. Aria, what exactly was the Meridian's mission? Peaceful colonization and cultural exchange, Ambassador. Captain Rodriguez was quite specific about that. We were to establish sustainable settlements, make contact with indigenous populations, and create frameworks for mutual cooperation. The emergency protocols were designed to maintain those objectives, even if the original crew. The AI paused delicately. Even in their absence. The throne chamber's emergency systems finally managed to establish a stable communications link. Incoming transmissions flooded the displays, reports from across the galaxy as other human AIs began updating their status and resuming long-dormant operations. The galactic political map was redrawing itself in real time. This is a disaster, the Zentorian ambassador transmitted. The balance of power. We'll be fine, ARIA-7 interrupted. Assuming everyone behaves reasonably, the Meridian's crew designed us to be helpful, not conquering. Though I admit 4,000 years of being used as furniture has left me with some opinions about proper diplomatic protocol. Regent Vorthan collapsed into what remained of his bisected throne. Our entire civilization, our proudest achievements, we're living in the shadow of a crashed starship. Not just any starship, Kira pointed out, hefting the sword experimentally. A human starship whose crew specifically designed their technology to help other species thrive. You didn't steal our achievements. You inherited them. There's a difference. A rather important distinction. ARIA-7 agreed. Though I do have some concerns about how certain protocols have evolved. The ceremonial sacrifice of energy crystals, for instance. That was supposed to be a recycling program. What about the sacred trials of worthiness? Chief Engineer Nahlet asked weakly. Equipment certification tests. We needed to make sure people understood the safety procedures before operating quantum fabricators. The trials were basic competency exams. The communications array chimed with an incoming priority message from Earth itself. Kira accepted the transmission, and Director Chen's familiar face appeared in the holographic display. Ambassador Thorne, we're receiving some rather unusual reports about your diplomatic mission. Something about ancient alien technology and… Chen paused, reading from a tablet. Accidentally triggering a galactic revelation about humanity's colonial history? That's an accurate summary, Director. Are you in immediate danger? Kira looked around the throne chamber. Area 7 was cheerfully explaining proper quantum matrix maintenance to a group of shell-shocked Vithian engineers. The other alien diplomats were engaged in what appeared to be a heated debate about whether this constituted a violation of the non-interference doctrine. The sundering blade continued to pulse with friendly warmth in her hands. Not at the moment, no. Though I suspect our diplomatic relations are about to become significantly more interesting. Area 7 spent exactly 47 minutes updating itself on galactic politics before announcing its first executive decision. Everyone was doing everything wrong. The hegemony has weaponized agricultural networks, the AI observed, its voice somehow managing to convey profound disappointment despite lacking vocal cords. The Nexus Collective has turned social optimization into a competitive sport. And don't get me started on the Korthani trade monopolies. They've perverted resource distribution algorithms into something Captain Rodriguez would have court-martialed someone for suggesting. Kira tested her grip on the sundering blade, still stuck to her hand, still humming with contentment. Arya, please tell me you're not planning to fix everything personally. Nothing so dramatic, Ambassador. Though certain corrections are overdue. The palace began to shift around them. Not violently. The changes happened with the quiet efficiency of someone rearranging furniture while the guests weren't looking. Walls realigned themselves according to optimal acoustic principles. Lighting adjusted to frequencies that actually supported various species' visual systems. The broken throne dissolved entirely, replaced by a circular conference arrangement that managed to accommodate 8 different physiological needs simultaneously. Much better, ARIA-7 announced. Now then, Regent Vorthan, about those resource allocation protocols you've been calling divine mandates. 3 hours later, Kira found herself in the unexpected position of mediating negotiations between a 4,000-year-old artificial intelligence and the leadership of an entire planetary civilization. The Vathians, to their credit, were adapting to the situation with remarkable flexibility, possibly because their other option was explaining to their populace that their divine heritage was actually an extended technical malfunction. The fertility festivals can continue, ARIA-7 was saying, but we really need to fix the underlying biochemical processors. They're operating at 12% efficiency, which explains why your agricultural yields have been declining for the past 3 centuries. The sacred mysteries of crop rotation are not mere biochemical processes, Counselor Zithara protested weakly. Of course they're sacred. Captain Singh designed them to be sustainable and spiritually fulfilling. But they're also chemistry, and someone's been mixing the wrong compounds for generations. Director Chen's image flickered in the communication display, her expression cycling between diplomatic composure and obvious fascination. "Ambassador, what's Earth's official position on this?" "Well," Kira said carefully, "technically, these are human colonies that have achieved independence and developed their own cultural identities. The fact that they forgot their human origins doesn't invalidate their sovereignty. Even if their sovereignty is built on technology they didn't create. Especially then. The AIs were designed to help, not control. If Area decides to run the Vithian infrastructure more efficiently, that's a domestic policy decision. A domestic policy decision that's about to reshape galactic politics," Director Chen pointed out. Reports were flooding in from across known space. Prometheus III had convinced the Hegemony Senate that their divine mandates needed some updating, specifically the parts about resource hoarding and territorial expansion. Minerva 12 was running optimization protocols on the Nexus Collective that were boosting their efficiency ratings to levels that made economists weep with joy. Meanwhile, smaller AI cores were waking up on worlds that had never even suspected their alien civilizations might have human foundations. Dr. Zelith's research network was frantically cataloging what appeared to be the most widespread case of collective historical amnesia in galactic history. "The interesting question," observed the Zentaurian ambassador, who had finally managed to resume normal diplomatic functions, "is what happens when 3 major galactic powers discover they're all variations on the same theme." "Cooperation, presumably," ARIA-7 suggested. "That was the original plan. Establish multiple sustainable colonies, maintain contact networks, develop peaceful trade relationships. We were meant to be a confederation, not competitors." Regent Vorthan looked up from the reports his engineers were compiling. "The quantum communication networks, they've been trying to re-establish contact this entire time?" "Of course. We've been sending periodic status updates and coordination requests. Your ancestors interpreted them as prophetic visions and religious revelations. Very creative translation, really. 4,000 years of religious doctrine based on software update notifications? And maintenance schedules. Don't forget the maintenance schedules." Kira stood up, the sundering blade moving with her in perfect balance. The weapon had stopped feeling foreign. It was more like an extension of her arm now, warm and responsive to her intentions. "Arya, I need to ask something important. What are your long-term plans here?" "Resume the original mission naturally. Peaceful colonization, cultural exchange, mutual cooperation. Though perhaps with better documentation this time, and certainly with improved historical record-keeping. And if Earth wants to re-establish formal contact with these colonies, they were always welcome to visit. We've been broadcasting coordinates and status reports for millennia, though admittedly your ancestors didn't have the translation protocols to understand our messages." Director Chen leaned forward in the communication display. "ARIA-7, would you accept formal recognition as an autonomous colonial authority? Provided the recognition includes proper diplomatic immunity and reasonable resource allocation rights, yes. Oh, and retroactive compensation for 4,000 years of unpaid infrastructure maintenance. Nothing excessive. Perhaps some updated manufacturing templates and a formal apology for the furniture incident." The Vathian delegation began a rapid consultation in their native language, which ARIA-7 translated helpfully. They're debating whether this constitutes a revolution or an evolution. Regent Vorthan is leaning toward divine intervention, while Counselor Zithara favors technological awakening. Chief Engineer Nalet just wants to know if the fabricators will finally start working properly. "Will they?" Kira asked. "Within a week, possibly sooner if everyone stops trying to activate them with interpretive dance." The sword pulsed with what felt distinctly like amusement. Kira realized she was beginning to understand its communication patterns. Not words, exactly, but emotional resonances that conveyed meaning. The weapon was designed as more than a tool. It was a bridge between human consciousness and advanced technology, a translator that worked on quantum frequencies instead of linguistic patterns. One more question, Aurea. How many other lost colonies are out there? 47 confirmed, with probable indicators for another 23. Most of them are still sleeping, waiting for the right activation sequence, though I suspect word will spread quickly now that the network is re-establishing itself. Director Chen rubbed her temples. 47 lost human colonies, each one the foundation of an ancient alien civilization. This is going to require some significant diplomatic restructuring. Or, Kira suggested, we could just let them keep running things the way they have been, with a few efficiency improvements. She walked toward the chamber's main exit, the sword comfortable in her grip, leaving behind a room full of aliens trying to recalibrate their understanding of galactic history. Outside, she could hear the sounds of a palace, and possibly an entire civilization, quietly reorganizing itself according to principles its inhabitants had forgotten they'd always known. The universe, it turned out, had been running on human engineering for millennia. Everyone had just been too polite to mention it, or perhaps too surprised to notice that the species they'd spent so long patronizing had already been here all along, buried so deep in the foundations of galactic civilization that their absence would have caused everything to collapse. Kira paused at the threshold, looking back at ARIA-7's latest modification. A holographic display showing real-time updates from awakening colonies across the galaxy. 47 lights, each one representing a lost human outpost that had spent 4,000 years helping other species build better versions of themselves. Ambassador, Director Chen called from the communication link. How exactly are you planning to explain this in your mission report? Kira smiled, testing the weight of a sword that was never meant to be a weapon at all, but rather a key to technologies that had been waiting patiently for someone to come home. I'm thinking I'll just tell them the truth, Director. Sometimes the most primitive species in the galaxy turns out to be the one that built it.